This video is brought to you by Ground News. With Keir Starmer heading a party that's declining in the polls, it's becoming increasingly clear that he could be in for a bumpy ride as Prime Minister. Already, he's had to promise the electorate that he'll perform a partial U-turn on the winter fuel allowance, and has started to shift rightwards on everything from the welfare state to immigration, in an attempt to hold firm against the rise of reform. However, despite this, net government approval is still sitting at minus 50%, and reform is still dominant in the polls. Against this backdrop, last month, someone leaked a memo from Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner criticising the government's conservative fiscal policy, and on Saturday, Andy Burnham, the popular Labour mayor of Greater Manchester, made a speech at London's Ministry of Sound nightclub where he tacitly criticised the current administration and expressed his support for a series of slightly more radical left-wing ideas. This was widely interpreted by the press as something of a tentative leadership manifesto, and has fueled rumours that, especially on the left of the party, they might be planning to oust Starmer. So in this video, we're going to look at why parts of the party are apparently unhappy with Starmer, his potential replacements, and whether any of this could actually happen. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. Now, before we start, we should dig a little deeper into Labour's current predicament. As things stand, not only have Labour slumped to second place in the polls, but Starmer individually appears to be struggling. His government approval rating is sitting at minus 47, his personal approval rating is sitting at minus 36, and more people now think he should step aside as leader than remain in the job. Starmer's recent decision to try and tackle Farage head-on and adopt an out-Farage strategy may well be a big part of the problem here. Starmer has cracked down harder on immigration, cut welfare spending, and weakened his support for the transgender community following a ruling from the Supreme Court. Considering that Starmer ran his leadership campaign in 2020 on a left-wing platform, promising, among other things, to defend migrant rights and to support social justice, there's a growing sense of betrayal among Labour members. We can see this when we have a look at the ideological perceptions that people have of the political parties. Polling from YouGov shows exactly where people who voted for each of the major parties last year see themselves on a left-right political spectrum, and where they see the other parties. Labour voters are unique here, seeing themselves as further from the centre on average than the party itself. This at least implies that what many Labour voters want is for the party to move to the left. Some senior Labour figures, realising the trouble that Starmer and the party are in right now, have made not-so-subtle pitches for the leadership. The first of these was Angela Rayner, the UK's Deputy Prime Minister, whose memo criticising decisions made by Chancellor Rachel Reeves in this year's spring statement was leaked a few weeks ago. In the memo, Rayner suggested that the Treasury should raise certain taxes in order to fill the black hole in the public finances. Specifically, she suggested removing inheritance tax relief for AIM shares, closing the commercial property stamp duty loophole, reinstating a pensions lifetime allowance, raising the bank surcharge to 5%, removing the dividend allowance, increasing the annual tax on enveloped dwellings, reversing the child benefit charge, and freezing the additional income tax threshold on any earnings over £125,140. Essentially, Rayner's plan was to tax wealthier people and groups rather than cut welfare. According to the Telegraph, who broke the story, Rayner was becoming increasingly exasperated by having to publicly defend spending cuts. Now, while there's no suggestion that Rayner had anything to do with the leak of this memo, it does certainly suggest to the public that under her, the Labour Party would move to the left and look to use the wealthy to pay for the increasing costs of other parts of the state. It's also been reported for a little while now that Rayner likely harbours leadership ambitions, and while this may not be the start of an official leadership challenge, it will likely cement in people's minds what she stands for and what her Labour Party could look like. But Rayner isn't the only high-profile Labour figure that's been in the news recently as a result of their purported leadership ambitions. The Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, gave a speech on Saturday at London's Ministry of Sound nightclub, in which he outlined things he thinks the Labour Party should be doing differently. In particular, he suggested that they should be the unifying popular left in opposition to a divisive populist right, move away from the factionalism that has bedeviled us on all sides of the party and across the left, launch the biggest and quickest council and social house building programme Britain has ever seen, start a new overriding national target on housing, introduce proportional representation to bring a new politics, bring in free transport for teenagers in England, reset the balance between taxing labour and wealth as we have overtaxed labour and undertaxed wealth, and to not look to get fairness by cutting benefits for pensioners' winter fuel allowance, with a need to think again on disability benefits and not make cuts. Now, it's worth pointing out that Burnham didn't just criticise the government, he also made clear that there are some areas he thought they were making good progress on, for instance on rail nationalisation. Like Rayner, this wasn't an explicit leadership challenge, but it shows his frustration with the current leadership, and likely shows he has at least one eye on what happens after Starmer. So with all of this in mind, it's probably worth moving on to have a look at whether there's any risk that either Rayner or Burnham, or even someone else in the party harbouring leadership ambitions, like for instance Wes Streeting, could topple Starmer. Well, the first thing to consider here is whether any of these candidates actually think they would be successful in ousting Starmer. After all, we're less than a year into his premiership, and there's no guarantee that Labour members would actually back a coup attempt. Even assuming they did, though, there are some significant hurdles that would need to be overcome. For starters, in Burnham's case, any challenger needs to be an MP, so he would need to resign from his position as Mayor of Greater Manchester and stand in a parliamentary by-election before challenging Starmer, which in itself would be a massive risk. Even as an MP, though, challenging the leader isn't easy. Unlike with the Conservative Party, there isn't an initial no-confidence vote. A sitting Labour MP needs 20% of their colleagues to back a leadership challenge, at which point a leadership election is called, with the incumbent automatically put on the ballot. While it's quite possible that we could reach the point where such a challenge could be successful, we're probably not there yet. As the saying goes, if you go for the king, you better not miss, and right now, a miss is probably more likely. If you want to know more about this topic, there's plenty of other outlets reporting about it online. Unfortunately though, it's sometimes hard to tell exactly which way these outlets lean politically, making it difficult to understand exactly how your view of world events is being biased by the sources you're reading. That's where this week's sponsor, Ground News, comes in. Their website and app, developed by a former NASA engineer, allows us to pull back the curtain on media bias and have a look at exactly how each story is being covered. For instance, this story about Angela Rayner's leaked memo has been covered by more than 22 sources. We know that around 5 of these have been reported by the left and 7 of these have been reported by the right. That's not all though. Ground News has tons of genuinely useful features. Take their blind spots feed, for instance. This shows you the stories underreported by one side of the political spectrum or the other. For example, if you lean right, you probably missed this story on Chuck Schumer renaming Trump's megabill as the Well We're All Going to Die Act. Here at TLDR News, we think that Ground News is an incredibly useful tool for our current media landscape, one that's constantly trying to attract your attention and sway you towards or away from certain political viewpoints. So having a tool that helps you spot this and helps you take action really is a game changer. If you're interested in everything Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage Plan subscription by using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. This limited time offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.